Alabama football in 2024, guys, let's be honest about it. Kind of sucked, didn't it? It was kind of on the downside for especially those Tide faithful out there who are so used to the double-digit win seasons. Let's break it down simply. Alabama came into the season with what, like a 9.5 over under?
hmm
Is it just safe to say that falling short of that expectation is enough to justify a unsuccessful, sucking year for Alabama? What do you think, Freddie?
I say no. Um,
Okay.
but I do think the season sucked. And I'm going to explain why. I think going 9-3 was realistic, right? Like, I think if you looked at the schedule, yes, you had a lot of good home games, i.e., Georgia, and Missouri at the time was a top 10 team preseason. You thought, man, this is going to be a high profile matchup. We know what happened to Missouri toward the end of the year. They ended up not being as good, but still had a very respectable record. But I still think it's disappointing because it's not the fact you went 9-3; it's the fact of who you lost to. You lost to a Vanderbilt, right, which was unprecedented at Alabama to lose to Vandy, and then you also lose to a 6-6 Oklahoma team, which, to be fair, has a lot of good talent, but did not show up in a lot of games this year. So you talk about those two losses in particular is just embarrassing to me. Especially the Oklahoma one when you still have a chance to reach the SEC title and like it is still within grasp, but you have to win two ball games and that's it, and you drop the Oklahoma one. Um, it is embarrassing. Now you did beat Georgia at home, which honestly for a lot of Alabama fans is worth the 9-3 to me. To still continue to prove that Georgia is the little brother to Alabama and that Georgia still cannot beat Alabama. I think Alabama fans sold their soul to win that game. I really, really do. If you would have lost that one, but beat a Vandy, I don't know how people feel about this year. To be honest, I think it's a different tune. I like what they've got going forward into 2025. I think this was a very good transition year. You still had some players that obviously DeBoer probably respected in Jalen Milroe, but did not really fit his scheme and what he wants to do moving forward. So I think he respected them. He respected the players that wanted to stay and make the transition possible. But I fully expect next year to be go time when you talk about winning and playing Alabama championship football. It's just not something that we saw in 2024.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad we did Michigan last week and we're doing Alabama again here. And honestly, the records don't show up, but these teams were kind of very similar in year one with new head coaches, in my opinion. Um, I thought during the offseason they easily could have been 11 win team, but a 9 win team is what I saw for Alabama. But that's still not to say that this season didn't suck for them. As an Al, as a, I'm partial to Alabama, but as I've grown older, it's more of an SEC bias overall. I'm going to focus more on the SEC than just my particular team in Alabama. This is the first time they haven't won double-digit games since 2007, Nick Saban's second year. And I think it was, and I like what Freddie mentioned, how Kalen DeBoer was really partial to the guys that decided to stay and come back. I think that was I think that was the biggest downfall and why you went 9-4 or 9-3 in the regular season. Mainly because you're trying to cater to the guys that are so pay respect, pay homage to those guys, and I think that was the biggest problem. Mainly Milroe and stuff. Instead of going ahead and setting up your offensive scheme and setting up, hey, these are the guys that are going to make us good in the future, and still have a because you were still going to have kinks regardless. However, put the guys in place that you see for your future more so because Milroe probably could have been a little bit more successful somewhere else. Probably could have helped his Heisman campaign, probably could have helped his NFL draft prospects, stuff like that. But instead, DeBoer wanted to keep, because he's a great leader, to keep him in house and then also try and fit him into his system. And then you saw how that worked out. You lose a few games you shouldn't. You win a big game, but you lose the couple that you shouldn't. Um, Overall, you see the workings that are coming for Alabama and what they're going to do in the future. However, this season, losing to Vandy, losing to Oklahoma is just, you can't do it. Definitely not after having the high of beating Georgia. Because if you swap around, you go 9-3 and you lose to Georgia, you lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl since it's coach's first year, stuff like that. It's a little different because you know those are high stake games, a lot bigger games. You don't lose to Vandy, you don't lose to Oklahoma, and so we did Michigan a week ago. I think Alabama's season over, like if you're really spacing out and looking at it, honestly, is worse than Michigan's 7-5 season that they had, or 8-4, whatever they ended up, because of who they lost to and how they lost. The Oklahoma game was just all tires came off the card there. That one was just absolutely ugly. Vandy was this historic moment for Vandy, which is a tad different, but still at the same point, you didn't get it done. So if you go 9-3, you lose to the Bulldogs at home and you lose to Auburn because it's your first year and it's big stake games in the SEC for a head coach that's never coached south of, of California, then it's a lot different. But overall, yeah, Alabama sucked this season. And you know what? And I'm gonna continue. Let me get on one soapbox real quick, gentlemen. I think it's great. I think it's great that they sucked because every stinking bandwagon fan that has jumped on this Alabama hype train since like 2012, when it was, oh, they're winning so much, let me get on that. Just every stinking fan that has jumped on this and just like, Alabama should be like that. I just hate those kind of fans. Just those uppity nose in the air fans that is not Alabama brand at all. Not it's just killed me. And so it's nice that they have a dose of medicine that sits them back down a little bit, puts them in the rocking chair, not to you, Quinn, but puts them down and says, hey, you're not this elite person. This is what real college football is like without the best dang coach that's ever graced a sideline. So I just got to say that. So this was a good season for them. And I had a very big feeling that Kalen DeBoer was going to step into hey, if you don't win the SEC championship and national championship in year one, your head will be cut off. And there are a couple of fans out there like that, not as much as I thought. But there were a couple fans out there like that, and it's just nasty to see. But anyway, yes, Alabama sucked this season. Quinn?
Yeah, I will say I'll start with they definitely sucked this year, and I think the number one reason to point that out in my mind is through the last couple seasons of the Saban era. I think the biggest critique people would have had of those teams was the lack of discipline they had that was costing them in big moments, which was uncharacteristic to how his teams had played in previous seasons. I think the reason this year sucked for Alabama so bad was the games they did lose. I would say aside from the Tennessee game, but the rest of them, they played insanely, uncharacteristically undisciplined ball, like really bad, undisciplined football in all of those losses. Like they looked like a completely different team than the teams that were winning games, like in a way that I've never witnessed with Alabama football before. So I would say that's the number one reason. I don't even think it's who they lost to. I know there's a lot of focus on, oh, they lost to Vandy, oh, they lost to Oklahoma. It would have been different if they lost to, say, Auburn and Georgia. I kind of disagree. I think if you lose the Georgia game, it gives you this feeling that Georgia's past you, and then that would give you a Tennessee and Auburn loss as your other losses. I think the Alabama fan base would be furious if you lost to Tennessee, Auburn, and Georgia in one year.
Yeah.
I think it was more the way you lose, where you just played uncharacteristic, undisciplined ball that just falls apart. Now, the good news for DeBoer is I think he's got a pretty decent chance of launching back into a pretty good spot next year if all things kind of get under his leadership, his guidance, and go the way he goes. Because if the biggest critique I can give of you for your first year is that your team was super undisciplined, but then they had these high highs, I'm going to give a first year coach the benefit of the doubt that maybe that's a first year issue and you're going to get that sorted out long term. And then we get a lot more of those highs, a lot less of those lows. But for 2024, I think it's unquestionable that Alabama sucked. But now we want to know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, get down there. Tell us what you think about Alabama in 2024. Did they suck or not?